Welcome back to another episode of our podcast. My name is David Levine, founder and CEO of Res Tech Solutions. And today we are talking about the future ready law function, fractional general counsel, AI, and managing risk at scale. And I'd like to welcome our guest today, Jesse. So, Jesse, thanks for joining and go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks. I'm Jesse Strauss, a New York City-based fractional general counsel. I provide services to a variety of different small and medium-sized businesses and individuals. We do a lot of transactional work, a lot of asset purchases, a lot of employment work, a lot of financings for various types of assets. I also have a small litigation practice that I do too for my clients, where there's a New York-based litigation that I can assist with. I also manage of litigations around the country, although I obviously don't appear in court on those matters just because I'm only licensed in New York. But yeah, I've been doing this now for about 2.5 years. Prior to that, I was an in-house general counsel at two startups, one of which we sold, one of which didn't go anywhere. And prior to that, I had my own practice and I worked at some firms.
So, fractional general counsel and AI are both reshaping how companies think about legal support. From your perspective, what does a future ready legal function actually look like today?
Yeah, I think that the key is being lean. I think that there's, historically, in order to get legal work done, especially, for transactions and some litigation, you needed a large sort of team to do that. You need a lot of support services. AI is eliminating a lot of that. And so, the lawyers in the future and the law firms and the practices like mine that are sort of leveraging AI to really create faster, cheaper legal work without sacrificing quality are really going to be the winners in the space. And that's a lot of what we do at Your Fractional General Counsel. Essentially when I always talk about this, but when I started at firms, 25 years ago, 22 years ago or so, we had things like typing pools, right? Where partners would send along, their handwritten notes or their dictated notes, and they would get, a brief or a memo or a clause back to them the next day. We don't need that anymore. All that's gone. You don't even really need an associate in some ways to put a clause together or to put a document together. The AI, if you've got good templates and you know how to use it, it can really come up with pretty quality work in a fraction of the time it used to take. Um, it's a real challenge to a lot of lawyers who are accustomed to billing by the hours, and it's billing by the hour, and have built their whole practice around leveraging low cost associates, paralegals to get that stuff done. Once you sort of rethink it from the ground up about how you design your practice and the workflows and how you service your clients, it's a huge opportunity.
All right. Well, great. Appreciate the insight. And I know from our prior conversation, you mentioned that you were one of the early adopters of the fractional general counsel model here in the US. So, what gaps did you see in traditional legal services that pushed you in this direction?
Yeah, I think a lot of clients, and I did this myself when I was an in-house GC, you would hire on a project basis, right? So you'd bring a lawyer in and you'd say, well, we have this particular deal we need done, and let's ink the deal. And the lawyer, you might have had a relationship with them in the past, but they didn't really understand your business the way your in-house team did. So what a fractional general counsel practice is doing is they're essentially part of the team, right? My clients really, I'm involved with them daily. Emails are passing through on things that sometimes are not, necessarily projects that I need to be working on or requests for work for me, but just so I can keep abreast of what the company is doing and how they're, and how they're thinking and how they're planning and the strategic parts of it, and then come in, as needed on the projects, right? So it's a little bit of a different thing. You're more integrated into the team, and you sort of know, who's on the team beyond just the general counsel over there to the extent they have one or other lawyers. So it's really bridging and a sort of a hybrid function of both in-house and also an outsourced legal resource. So that's the model we use, and it's been quite successful. I think that the companies that work with us, even if sometimes they do have lawyers in-house, really enjoy the fact that we do integrate ourselves into their company in a way. I have clients for whom I actually use their email addresses, so they think that anybody interacting would actually think I was in-house. In fact, I'm not. But yeah, it's things like that, and it's just a different way to think about it. There are firms out there that have said that they are doing, fractional legal support for a while, so that it's not new in that way. But this is all we do. I mean, in other words, you don't hire us, unless you're looking for a fractional.
All right. Well, great. And actually, with my next question, I know you kind of touched on this a little bit, but maybe we can expand a bit in this area. But how are you currently using AI in your day to day work to deliver faster and more cost effective outcomes for clients without sacrificing quality or judgment?
Yeah. So, well, the judgment, I'm not outsourcing any judgment to the AI. So, and it's not designed for that, and nobody would do that unless they really have no idea what they're doing. The what's being outsourced to the AI, and when we're using the AI for, is the drafting, right? And that was always sort of a bottleneck, I think, in a lot of legal work, is that there is this period of time that it would take a lawyer to actually draft a clause, right? And then there'd be typos, and then there'd be things that don't match. The AI is really good at catching that stuff. You have to be careful. You have to know how to use it. But I would say it's reduced my drafting time by about 25%. And or sorry, by 75%, right? Which is great. And that's really the way it's leveraged, just to reduce the amount of time it takes. A lot of lawyers are afraid of that because they don't have the volume at that point to keep earning the same, the same revenues they've had in the past. It's 75% of the time is now gone. What you do on that is you replace it. I mean, you just have to be out there, pounding the pavement, getting more clients. And if you serve your clients and they see these bills are lower than they'd otherwise be, right? I mean, there's transactions that I think probably would have cost, 50, $60,000, that I'm doing for like 10 or 12, just because it's so much quicker for me to draft. And I don't, I just make it up. And the client, I think, appreciates that, and they come back to me with other things, and they engage me as a fractional general counsel, and that's my model. So yeah, it's sort of a great new way to do law. I mean, it is, and I'm very aware of this. It is a challenge to the traditional model of the billable hour, and we really have to sort of think through that, and how the law firms and practices like mine adopt to it.
Okay, great. And kind of still on the topic of AI. So I know with platforms out there like Lawyer Loop AI and other similar ones, how do you think about the balance between automation and human oversight in the legal decision making process today?
Yeah, I think in the last year or so that the thinking on this has changed. I think a lot of people, when AI first sort of came out, me included, said, well, the key here is for the AI to deliver legal services directly to the client, and that's how things like Lawyer Loop AI were designed. And there's a couple other things out there that actually say, well, there's a human sort of, but it's, most of this work is being done by AI, and we're going to generate the work product out there. I think that now the thinking is that we're just leveraging AI to make human lawyers better. So the idea that the AI is going to be able to perform legal work, I am going to be able to use that legal work, I think was a little bit ambitious. I think a lot of people went down that path. There's still some folks who are doing that. But really, I think you can't eliminate, the human lawyer, but you need to expect your human lawyer to use AI to deliver faster, cheaper legal work for you.
And that's a great point because the one thing I've heard from a lot of folks that we've had these conversations with, probably the biggest concern with AI and legal is, especially when you're doing the research and things related to that, how much hallucination that actually still occurs with the AI. And I'd be very curious to understand, for those maybe you've spoken with that have gone down that route early on, maybe using the AI for most legal work compared to maybe what they see today, how they found that with all the issues that a lot of lawyers that I've spoken to have said, yeah, we still see this a lot with AI when it's used.
Well, yeah, I mean that's a distinct part, like a distinct practice area, which is litigation and brief drafting. Essentially, you can use it for that, but you have to do your legal research yourself. So there are some tools now that are basically owned by the people who already own all of the legal research tools, right? Like Westlaw and Lexis, right? Like those two, they have their own AI products now, and what they're doing is they're taking all their cases that they have, 200 or 150 years of cases, and they're putting an AI, layer on them and making them accessible to the AI. In theory, that should cut back on the hallucinations because the AI comes up with a case. It can also check itself against their database. In theory, right? I don't know. I haven't used those tools. I actually have a traditional Westlaw subscription I share with another lawyer. So when I do need legal research, I do need it every so often, right? Questions. I actually the AI tells me something, if there's any case in there, I'll immediately go to the Westlaw to see if it's a real case. A lot of times it's not. It does hallucinate. So you have to be careful. The real case does exist though, if you know how to look for it. Like it's not, it's just getting the name wrong and it's like an amalgamation of different cases, but there's an actual case out there that probably says what the AI is saying it says, and you just need to find it and you need to read it. And what's very nice about it is you can then once you find that case, or you can also start the other way and find your own case. But with the AI, the AI does a great job of like reading the case, right? It actually can read it, tell you, these are the key points of it. This is where it differs from this case. So it does a really nice job of that work that you would, most of the time at law firms, or I used to do this, I did this for 10 years, associates would do. I mean, your associate would just spend, 10 hours reading cases and digesting them and writing a memo on them. The AI can do it now in 15, 20 minutes. You pull the cases and run it through a couple different iterations and stuff. So that's a huge time saver. And it's pretty awesome. I mean, and the work is good. There are little things that you have to watch out for that are sort of traps for the unwary. Sometimes it won't understand the difference between the dissent, right, which is somebody, judge disagreeing with the holding of the case versus the holding of the case. So you just have to make sure it's not pulling. It's like, oh, this is what the case says. Oh no, that's actually what the dissent says. It's you have to just look at that. So, but it's getting better and better. And you can also prompt it. You can say, well, there's this case includes dissent. Please disregard that when telling me whether what this case is about. So things like that.
No, great. Appreciate that insight because I know that's something that's been brought up a lot, and just wanted to just get some clarity for those who may still be kind of wondering, in this area, what can it actually do for me? So I appreciate that insight.
Yeah, no, no. I mean, it's not, it won't, don't use it for legal research. That's not what it's designed to do. There are products that are designed to do that, and you can buy them from Westlaw and Lexis and CaseNext or whoever it is, but don't take a standard, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude and try to have it do the research.
And so, kind of switching gears a little bit. So, what do you enjoy most about serving as a fractional general counsel versus being in a traditional in-house or firm role?
So, the most important thing is that this is my business, right? So, I'm not that there's no politics, there's no determining comp. I mean, it's all me. And I think that, a lot of lawyers are not necessarily entrepreneurial. Some are very entrepreneurial, more entrepreneurial than me, but most really enjoy, the structure of working within a company. And so, if that's your thing, right? Like be in-house, work for the government, be part of a law firm, all that is for you. I mean, I get a lot of joy out of having my own business, running my own practice, having a relationship with my clients, getting to know my clients' business, right? Getting to really be a part of the team. A lot of these companies are early stage and I take them through later stages. So watching them grow, watching them iterate, being a part of that and contributing where I can, those are all really rewarding parts of the practice that you don't necessarily get when you're at a law firm. Some law firms, possibly, there's definitely law firms that specialize in working with startups, and they definitely want to see them grow. And that's their they have equity in the startup, however they might organize it, but being in a fractional practice, that's what I'm doing a lot of the time. And it's only for startups. It's also for folks who aren't, who are bootstrapping as well and taken outside investment. And don't have a growth plan, right? Beyond just like providing a good product and organically building. So, so that's what I'm there to help them. And I find
Great.
it very rewarding.
All right. And as you help companies that are scaling through fundraising or with contracts and employment growth, what are the biggest operational or technology related risks that you're seeing founders underestimate right now?
I mean, that's like it's really industry and industry, space to space. So it's a little different in each one. I mean, I would say that the folks who are building in the AI space, and I have a couple of clients who are doing that, it's really hard because the technology is just changing so rapidly that a business plan that looked really solid today, the next 2 weeks later, you've got some off the shelf sort of something from ChatGPT or Claude or one of those that could basically do what your product was supposed to do. So that's been challenging to folks. Um, the other thing is that a lot of people are using AI to just create documents and stuff, and the AI sometimes gets way ahead of what the human reader is could read. So you'll get something from a client that's like very long, and or maybe opposing counsel that's clearly written by AI that might not have been totally thought through or read, and it's my job to then get that in order. I use AI to do that, of course, but it's a challenge.
Okay, great. Well, I appreciate that insight. And so, as clients are moving faster, they're using more of the SaaS tools and relying on AI. How often do cybersecurity or data protection conversations come up organically versus after something potentially goes wrong?
Yeah, I mean, if they're using AI and they're putting in, sort of sensitive data, right, from their customers. I mean, I think that's a discussion we always have at the outset about that. You don't necessarily want to do that on an off-the-shelf product. There are products that do have some, security systems there, and you're going to want to use those. So I think that we are relying, as we always have, right? When I'm advising clients about systems and privacy, you're really, in a lot of ways, there's what you're doing with the data before you enter it into the system, right? And that's where we have to be careful, right? But once the data is entered in the system, it's understanding, the privacy policy of that system, the software you're using. And so, so I'll always, pay attention to that when I look over a vendor services agreement. What information are you putting in there? What is the vendor doing with it? What are the indemnities in the event of a data breach on the vendor's part? It's very important. What kind of insurance does the vendor have? So all those things are the same with AI. You shouldn't be putting sensitive data into ChatGPT, into Claude, into Gemini. Although the Gemini, if you have it on the workspace, it's a little bit, there's some data protection there. But yeah, just be aware of that, and then don't run your client sensitive data through there. Is my advice.
Perfect. And so, for companies leaning into AI and fractional leadership models, what's one proactive step you think every founder should take to reduce their legal and operational risk before it becomes a problem?
Well, I think we touched on something. Don't do the sensitive data in there. Know what you're using the AI for. Don't think that it can automatic. It's like a magic box. In some ways it is, but in other ways, so set up a little bit. Okay, so yeah, in some ways it is a magic box. In other ways it's not. Like it has its limitations. Certainly, test it, make sure it's doing the things you want to do, develop workflows around it. In other words, develop, how you're going to use it, when, which documents you put in. I'll give an example. Like, generally I have existing templates for things, right, that I've used for years before AI. I'll make sure the AI is trained on those, right, and then I'll start with the client thing. If it's something where I don't have a template, if it's like a very bespoke type of thing, I'll poke around. I'll poke around the web and find other folks who have done this type of thing. Giving the AI some type of baseline to work off of, and not deviating from it to make up its own thing, right? Because it's eager to please. That's super important too. So as you go in, make sure you have a very specific task that you want the AI to do. Don't think you can just do everything. Only give it that portion of the task, and be very specific about, you know, sticking to the template and not going beyond it, and only doing things that it has confidence in, right? So make sure you can tell your different confidence levels, right? Say like, make sure your confidence level is, 1 to 10, one being least confident, 10 being the most confident. Before you give me an answer, I need your confidence level to be at least an 8, right? And the AI will know. I mean, it'll say, I can't confidently tell you this, but I can, or can't confidently, work with this document, but I can do this part of it, and it'll actually be iterative and really work with you on.
Oh, great. Well, I appreciate all your insights today. Are there any final thoughts you'd like to leave with the audience?
No, I mean, I think that the fractional services I offer, and the fact that I do things faster and cheaper than the competition, and take pride in that, and sacrifice quality, is a basically a benefit of AI, right? And it's one of the ways that AI really can reduce costs, can reduce legal costs for companies. You can't do legal work yourself, at least not yet. And even if you could, I don't know if you'd want to, right? Like, I don't know if you want to be your own accountant, but it's a way that you could definitely find savings. And yeah, I would encourage folks, whether it's me or some other fractional general counsel who actually really uses AI, isn't locked into a billable hour model, to really to look for that type of service.
All right. Well, Jesse, again, I appreciate everything you had to share with us today, and thank you for coming on. And for anyone who would like more information, I will have all the information in the description below this video. So if you are looking or interested in the fractional model here that Jesse offers, you'll be able to reach out and learn more.
Great. Thanks a lot, David.
Well, thank you.
All right.